I love it. It is raining here today. I'm not sure if it's raining up there or not.
No, it looks like it'll be a beautiful day.
Aw, that's good.
Mhm.
We
Mhm.
are gonna give it a few minutes to let everybody have a chance to come in. I
Okay.
have Coffee with Democrats in Connecticut with us this morning.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Me too. Me too. Um, Audra is going to be starting her Coffee with Democrats in the next couple of weeks. And I'm really, really excited about what she'll be doing with Coffee with Democrats.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, just trying to follow in Kelly's awesome footprints.
uh, I mean, thank you. I appreciate that. Audra, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us about your Coffee with Democrats and what you'll be doing?
Sure. As Kelly said, my name is Audra. I live in Hartford, Connecticut, and I am a professor at a local university. I will be my. I mean, I'm the only coffee so far. I'm the only coffee with Democrats that's in a blue state. Hopefully not for long. I mean, hopefully we'll have more blue states. Not that I hope we don't have no longer blue states. My plan is to hopefully I want to focus more on having activists and advocates for and progressive candidates, Gen Z organizers on to tell us about what they're doing, how people can help, and maybe how they can do similar work in their own states. People aren't from Connecticut. So, yeah.
Awesome. I think that's so needed. Even being in a blue state, there's always room to improve. And the things that you've been doing there with the protesting and all of that is really awesome.
It's been fun to get to know and to see so many active people working together to help these. We have our local SEIU 1099. It's for workers, home workers who work with provide care for people with disabilities. They've been on strike for the past 3 weeks, trying to get a living wage. So a bunch of us from different unions have been working with them to protest and do some civil disobedience and like. So it's been interesting and fun.
Yeah, do you want to talk about just a little bit about what happened last week?
Um, sure. There is an organization in Connecticut that started. I want to say in the middle of or towards the end of like the. I don't want to say towards the end of the COVID pandemic, but at the sort of height of the pandemic, it's called Recovery for All Connecticut. And the idea was that we wanted to move forward having recovery from COVID and like equitably so that everyone would have their needs met, so on and so forth. So this organization is now basically an umbrella organization for 70 different groups, including unions, community organizations, and faith organizations. And basically what we're trying to do is get solidarity across all of these different groups to so that we can work together to support all of everyone in Connecticut. So they've organized a civil disobedience on last Wednesday, I think. And there were about 58 of us who were a part of it. We wound up, blocking traffic and sitting in the street, just demanding a better pay for these 1099 workers and a moral budget from the governor. And we got arrested. But it was really great to see all of these different people come together and take a stand for what's right.
I mean, it's needed. It's very much needed, especially, those workers they want better wages, they want benefits, they're working for very, very little, and they don't have benefits, and they're doing hard work. They're working with people with disabilities, and those are long hours, and it is a lot of physical work. So just to you were talking about their pay is, I think, $15 an hour, which sounds like a lot in some of the states here, in the South, but that's not enough there in Connecticut.
Hmm.
Yeah, no, it's not even close in Connecticut. I mean, I'm a professor. I'm a tenured professor, and I have a hard time, um, keeping up with bills and the like, and rent, especially in Connecticut. Imagine $15 an hour without benefits. That's and a lot of these people are single parents, or um, they're taking care of our most vulnerable populations, and they're called essential workers. They were called heroes, and yet we don't treat them that way. So yeah, I'm just hoping that we can work together to get them recognized, and others as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's very much needed. So thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you.
Well, I would like to get started if you all are ready. I'm so excited about this conversation. We're going to be talking about censorship, and it is happening so much around the state of Arkansas. We're seeing libraries all over the state being attacked, and in Craighead County, their library was defunded. And today we're talking with Rebecca and Mandy about the censorship going on in Crawford County.
Yeah.
And I want to just give some information about the two of you real quick, so that everybody can get to know you. Um, Rebecca Verdon began working in libraries 20 years ago as a teenager and has a master's degree of Science of Information Studies from the University of Texas at Austin. After graduation, she worked for 2 years as the assistant director for Polk County Library System, and then 7 years as the library director for the University of Arkansas Community College in Morrilton. 3 years ago, her husband and her moved to the River Valley for his job, and she left the workforce to focus on starting a family. They reside in Crawford County and have a 2-year-old and a 5-month-old. And we also have Mandy Steele. She is a lifelong resident of Crawford County. Her husband and she have 3 grown children. For the past 20 years, she's been an advocate and case manager for individuals with disabilities and special needs. As a mother of an adult son with autism, she understands the unique challenges that families face and has dedicated her career to supporting them. She serves on the Parent Advisory Council for Children's Medical Services and founded a local autism support group. Recently, she started volunteering with the Fort Smith Lambda Society, a community center for LGBTQIA plus youth adults, families, and allies. She's also the regional director for Free Mom Hugs in the River Valley, an organization that provides support and advocacy for the LGBTQIA plus community. And she's committed to creating a more inclusive and equitable society where everyone has the opportunity to thrive. I am honored to have the two of you on Coffee with Democrats this morning.
Oh,
You're
we're
both
happy
doing so
here.
many amazing things.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So let's just dive in. I've heard so much about Crawford County and what is going on there, from different people that we've talked to here on Coffee with Democrats, and then just in my community. And unfortunately, I haven't kept up with the news as much as I would like to. So could you give us some background into what is going on?
Absolutely. There's a lot of moving pieces involved in this. But I think that what's going on here in Crawford County, I'm hoping that as we're going through some of the backgrounds, our listeners will be able to pick up on if anything similar is going on in their communities so they can be proactive about getting ahead of some of these censorship issues, because this can happen absolutely anywhere. So what's going on here in Crawford County is that about 6 months ago, at the end of the year, a group of citizens became concerned of some of the books that were in the public library. And they went to the Crawford County Quorum Court and said that the books were proof that our public librarians are groomers, that the tax dollars were being used for, quote, premature sexualization of our children, and that the library has, quote, pornography. Of course, when people use these words, people get emotional. And I don't fault that our justice of the peace, that they became concerned, and they did. So in December, we had one justice of the peace say that if obscene books weren't removed from our public libraries, then he would support efforts to defund the libraries, either through freezing the funding or by supporting citizens to have a millage to reduce library taxes. And as you mentioned, Jonesboro was defunded. So these are not idle threats. The public librarians took these threats on their face value, that if books were not removed from the children's section, that efforts would ensue to defund the public libraries. At that meeting, there was a group of very conservative Christians in the area who offered to purchase the books in question with the intent of destroying them. And that, to me, really sent a message, because destroying books is very symbolic. When we when we hear those words, we immediately think of the Nazis, we think of book burnings. And when you destroy books, you definitely are sending a message to a community. So the books in question were some children's books, and I have tweets about this if y'all want to share some of those tweets of the books that are in question. And they are not obscene. The library never had obscene materials or obscene books. What the library had are books that the quorum court members did not agree with. These were books factually about the LGBTQ community, just offering facts about the different types of flags available. These are books that talk about a little girl's grief of her uncle getting married to a man because she thought that she'd have less time to spend with him. And then another book, which is Cinderella, which is just a reimagining of the fairy tale Cinderella, but with two gay characters. This is not sexually explicit in any way, but they are LGBTQ books. And so a compromise was sought with the library. You know, the first option was that the books would be destroyed. If something wasn't done, the library was going to be defunded. And so the compromise that was sought was to have the children's books removed from the children's area and relocated to the adult section, where they are physically out of reach of children. They're up on a very high shelf that small children who they're intended for cannot reach. When you remove all the books about LGBTQ topics from a children's area, you are then presenting a children's area that only has one point of view, that a family consists of a heterosexual couple. And that, when you're only presenting one point of view, that is indoctrination. It also stigmatizes these topics by saying that children should not be reading about them. Okay, so the books were removed. The local county judge, he then installed 3 new library board members just to make sure that the books stayed removed from the children's area. And here we are today. So last month we started looking at what books were actually removed. And we learned that, yes, LGBTQ books were removed, but also topics that a parent might feel uncomfortable with talking to their child about were also removed. So that's when we started seeing that books about children with disabilities were removed. Books about world religions were removed from the children's area and relocated to the adult section. There's even a book about having a military mom that was removed from the children's section and put in the adult section. So what this tells me as a parent is that the quorum court is now predetermining what topics are or aren't appropriate for my child. And that's not the quorum court's job. That's my job as a parent. When I think about parents monitoring what their children are reading, I think of it from the point of view as a librarian, because that's my professional training. I'll also think of it from the point of view as the fact that I have 2 very small children. I have a 2-year-old and a 5-month-old. So as a librarian, we are taught that the American Library Association supports that parents and guardians are supposed to monitor what their children are reading in the library, just like with what they watch on TV. It's up to the parent to determine what topics are or aren't appropriate for their child. And since this is a public library, if a parent does not want their child to read a book, all they have to do is say, no, we're going to leave that book at the library. Public librarians are not forcing anyone to check out a book they do not like. In fact, public librarians will help you find books that most suit the reading needs of your child. So if you're looking for books about a specific topic, or if you want books that avoid certain topics, just talk to your public librarian. They will help find books that best suit your information needs. And then, of course, as a parent of a 2-year-old, I know what's best for her to be reading right now. And if she does pick up a book with the topic that maybe makes me uncomfortable, like there are books about death of family members or death of loved ones, I'm not ready to have that conversation with her yet. So I would then leave that book at the library. This is all we're asking the other parents to do as well. If you don't want your child to read a book with gay characters in it, you have to be at the library with your child. So just say no. We're going to leave that there at the library. None of these books were obscene or even remotely sexual. So that's the basis of our lawsuit, is that the First Amendment guarantees us freedom of speech. Public libraries are considered a public forum, and books are a form of speech. So when you're removing en masse books about a certain topic, that is censorship. Moving them out of the children's area into the adult area stigmatizes them, and the other federal courts in other states have ruled that that's a First Amendment rights violation. Now, we also have another court case going on here in the state of Arkansas, and that is about Act 372. This was formerly known as the Senate Bill 81. It's been talked about a lot. It's the one where librarians will be held liable for distributing obscene materials or materials that are deemed harmful to minors. Both lawsuits, ours and the Act 372, were filed around the same time. And our lawsuit is, of course, they're two separate, but when we filed our lawsuit, the county's attorney, Gentry Wallmeyer, he said that the quorum court had the authority to move these books en masse and reference Act 372, even though it's not actually being enforced right now. It's not going to be enforced until August. And he also said that the books could be moved because they were sexually explicit. And so that's why they had the right to remove the books. With Gentry Wallmeyer referencing Act 372, that added Crawford County to a lawsuit against the states who are saying that Act 372 is unconstitutional. So once Gentry Wallmeyer started using that act to justify the actions of the quorum court, that's how Crawford County specifically got added to this lawsuit against the state of Arkansas over Act 372. Of course, my lawyers can explain this all much more eloquently than I can, but I think that gives everyone just some information, background about what has been happening and why we are here today.
Thank you. Yeah, oh gosh, I'll just say I don't understand the banning of the books and removing them and defunding libraries. It doesn't make any sense to me. I did put in the nest above this space a link to Cal's about their lawsuit.
Good.
A link from you about yours and some of your tweets as well. There's also that list of books that were removed.
Yes.
And I found quite a few of them on YouTube, and it doesn't make any sense to me why or how these were removed. The one about the mom being in the military, that is absolutely something I would have checked out for my children when they were younger.
Mhm.
It is just about a child going to a new school and talking about his mom in the military. That's on YouTube. It's a quick 5-minute. There's a story time on that. There was one by a congresswoman, and she was talking about her Native American heritage and wanting to run for office, so that there's representation in our government, which is very much needed.
Mhm.
And that was also removed. Um, and then we're talking about children with disabilities, and those those types of books are very much needed.
Yes.
Children with disabilities need to be able to see themselves represented in books, and I don't understand. I have not been able to read those or listen to those yet, but I don't understand at all why those would be removed. But we did have a good question in the chat.
Uh-huh.
Kevin from Coffee with Democrats in Oklahoma asked if any of these, uh, any of this is tied to anyone from Moms for Liberty.
We believe that the Moms for Liberties is supporting this because they visited the area in March of 2022. We've seen photos of them visiting some conservative Christian organizations, and then these efforts for censorship in the county happened a few months later. We don't know for sure. we don't have a Moms for Liberty group specifically in our county. The closest one is Washington. But I will say the people supporting book bans, they're following the Moms for Liberty play book. They're parroting saying the same things as Moms for Liberty says. In the May library board meeting, we really pressed the library board for more information about why other topics besides LGBTQ were being censored, such as disabilities and Native American and world religions. And their response, specifically when library board members said that any topics that a parent might feel uncomfortable addressing with their child needed to be removed, because it was up to the parent to choose the time when that conversation happened, and that conversation should not be forced on a parent by the library to occur, before they were ready. And that's an understandable point of view, but also just reasonably, it's a public library, so you don't have to read a book that you feel uncomfortable with. But that doesn't give you the right to then say that other kids can't explore these topics.
Absolutely. I know that you mentioned that we don't know for sure if there's any ties to Moms for Liberty, but I think it's really ironic that their slogan is we don't co-parent with the government, and we're seeing them kind of infiltrate themselves into the government and trying to co-parent our children.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
it's ironic, it's hypocritical, it doesn't make any sense. But I wonder, is the Bible, was that removed?
Oh,
Um,
of course not.
There's been
I
talk of
mean,
it being challenged.
I did see, and I don't remember what state it was. Somebody did challenge it.
In Utah, it was
Mhm.
challenged
Utah.
and removed in some schools for certain age groups in Utah. Yes.
Oh, yeah. I mean, all of this is very one-sided, and just as a parent, I don't understand how that, the right wing is talking about, parents' rights. Well, where are my parents' rights? Where are my rights to say my child can read those books, and you can't take them away and make them inaccessible? Um, I'm very interested to see how all of this plays out.
Well,
What is Sorry, go ahead.
oh no, this is Mandy. I'm on Rebecca and I are sharing, and then I'm following along on my phone. But I, that's my biggest problem. I don't have small children anymore. They're all adults. But I have a neurodivergent child, and I have a child that is queer. And it really, really bothers me that these books aren't being made available to where, it's all through my son going through school and having autism. I fought with the school to get him services, and their issue with some of the services that we would request was it makes him stand out. It makes him stand out from the other kids. It makes him look different. But then now we've got people fighting back. We're wanting to have books available to all kids about disabilities, about different types of families, about different races, different cultures, and they're trying to take those away. Those books are key to helping normalize. We want them to be normalized. We want them to be able to read a book, and when they get introduced to a new kid at school that has a disability, it's not a big shock to them. Or if a kid brings up in conversation at the lunch table that, talking about, well, my mom's, that's not going to be we don't want that to be a huge shock. We want that to be normalized.
Mm-hmm. And another thing that Mandy spoke about is reading through these topics. Fiction gives us such a powerful tool. When you read fiction books about someone who's different than you start to be able to understand who they are and where they're coming from. We know in neuroscience that reading fiction makes you more empathetic. Reading books about people that are other than you makes you more empathetic. And shouldn't we be raising kids who are more empathetic to people that are maybe different than them? I mean, I want my kid to be empathetic and kind. If that makes me a crazy rogue liberal, well, okay then. When I was being raised, it was just called being a good person.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's what I want for my children. Um, I want them exposed to different cultures and different traditions, different religions, ways of thinking, ways of life. That's what I think makes this world so amazing. We're not all the same. We're not this cookie cutter um, standard of whoever's decided is supposed to be accepted. And when we remove the books, we remove that.
Yes. Yes.
What is the process in Crawford County to have a book removed from the
Absolutely.
children's section?
Yeah. So, and this is important. It's important when you hear about a group of people who are given special abilities to not have to follow library policy, right? So, here in Crawford County, our public library system has a policy in place for what's considered challenging materials or reconsidering materials. You'll find this in all public libraries as well as school libraries. They'll all have these policies in place. It may differ a little bit between the library, but here in Crawford County, if you think that a book should not be included in the library, you can fill out a form. It'll ask for specifics about the book. It'll ask if you actually read the book. It'll ask for your reasons as to why you think it should be removed. And then you turn in that form to the librarian, who will have the board review the book at the next board meeting. And the board members are given copies of the book. They're asked to read the book in its entirety, because this is really important. You have to consider a book in its context, right? When you're looking at whether or not it should be held in a library. An example that I like to use is, say I read 2 pages out of Animal Farm by George Orwell. I would be walking around in this world thinking that book was for kids about talking animals, which is, of course, definitely not the case. But that goes to show you what happens when you only read a page or 2 out of a book. So the board then reviews the book in its entirety, and they talk about it at the next board meeting. The patron who challenged the material has the can attend the board meeting and speak further about their views as to why it should be removed. And then the board votes about whether or not it should stay in the library's collection. They consider a lot of things, such as First Amendment rights. They'll also consider the selection policy for the library to make sure that the book is meeting selection standards for that particular library. And so what happened in this case is we see that process not being followed for over 200 books. I don't believe anyone actually read all 200 of these books before moving them. And instead, it was just decided if they're about certain topics, then they need to be removed.
That's definitely yeah, just looking at the titles and brief reflections of the book, we need to take it in its full context. And it definitely looks like certain books and certain authors, definitely certain topics were targeted when they went ahead and removed these books from the children's section. Audra, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for speaking about this. There's so much wrong with this. I was trying to organize my thoughts because there's so many issues here. I mean, first of all, the idea that speaking about being queer or trans or bi or gay or whatever, that in and of itself is sexual, but talking about heterosexual people is not,
Mm-hmm.
is disturbing, mind-boggling, and it is in itself like that's an ideology. That is not the truth. Um, the but beyond that, I mean, the First Amendment. If we look back at all the cases with First Amendment, the Supreme Court has been clear that you cannot ban ideas purely based on their content.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That like we don't have the right not to be offended. We don't like no one does. I mean, I know that these are for kids, so we're supposed to be about protecting minors. But as you pointed out, they're in removing the books. They're removing the opportunity for other parents to expose their children to those books. But
Mm-hmm.
if they just leave the books, the kids aren't forced to read them. They're just there. And if the
Mm-hmm.
parent doesn't want them to read it, they don't have to. So I guess like when I was hearing you talk about the process, it sounds like what they did by skipping that process is they basically made it so that anyone who's just doesn't like someone can therefore remove the book. So they're basically allowing these conservative parents to, I mean, those library bookshelves are going to be bare and empty if everyone who is offended by anything gets to decide to remove a book.
Yes.
Like,
censorship and book bans are a slippery slope. It may start with just one topic, but then it devolves into these other topics. And maybe the parents who are vegan will be offended by books about Thanksgiving and eating turkeys. So why don't we remove that as well? And it's a slippery slope. So that's why we try to just stop censorship just as early as we can. Please go on.
Yeah, so I was just going to ask. I mean, I like your example because I was thinking I'm offended by books that don't tell the truth about Thanksgiving. So can we remove all of those Happy Thanksgiving books? But I'm just wondering, like, do you have like is there a big? I guess like, can you talk about like the support that you're getting from other parents and the community?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So there's definitely a group that is supportive of LGBTQ rights. There's a group of Christians in the area who are standing up and saying that this is not our Christianity as we know it. Our Christianity does not involve hatred of the LGBTQ community. And then also, there's just the majority of parents out there who are reasonable and understand if they don't want a child to read a book about a topic, then they don't check that book out. And that is completely reasonable, and who do get upset when they hear that a small group of conservatives are trying to subvert their parental authority over what their child can or cannot read. Do you want to talk more?
Well, and that's one of the amazing things that I've seen in this process is previous to this happening, the libraries weren't an issue. This was not an issue. But living in our state, especially having queer family members, leaning left, being a Democrat, you feel pretty isolated in the process of all of this. People have come out of the woodwork supporting this because, like Rebecca said, it is a slippery slope. And it just leads to other things. So I've been pleasantly surprised at the support from our community and from educators, retired educators, retired administrators that have shown up at meetings and been supportive, because, especially being in the school system, they know what they have been up against, what we're up against. So, and it's been amazing, the people and that's how I found out about this. Was another parent contacted me, whose daughter worked for the library system, and she knew that I was involved with the LGBTQ plus advocacy in our area, and she said, "Hey, can you help us out? How would you feel about showing up to a meeting?" And I was able to filter that information to other parents, and word got out, and it's just snowballed. So
Yes, and one thing that Mandy pointed out is how many educators are involved in pushing back against book bans, because this attack on libraries, it's also an attack on public education systems as a whole.
One day I was sitting in the library, just sitting there working, and a retired administrator from our area happened to be in the library, and he walked up to me, and he had this book, and I apologize, I can't remember the name of it, but it's about a little girl that it talks about the love of her hair. And it's a Black little girl, and she loves her hair, and it talks about how she can style it different ways, and just how much she loves her natural hair. And he held it out to me, and he said, "Did you know this was separated from the rest of the children's book?" And I said, yes, sir, I did. And he said, this isn't going to work. And I could tell right then, and that was at the very beginning, that he was upset that, okay, we've got to put a stop to it.
Yeah, and that kind of illustrates how these book bans do get started. Is the rallying cry is that the library has X-rated materials, as we see in Saline County. The library has sexual materials and sex in the children's section. But when you actually look at what's being banned, it's pretty easy to see that was never the case. And I just want everyone who's here on our little coffee date to pay attention to a few things that these groups are doing to further bans in small communities. They're taking books out of context. So they'll show you a page or two out of a graphic novel or a book for teens that talks about sex, and that can be uncomfortable. But they don't show you the other 99% of that book so that you could read it and understand it in its context, which is so very important. They'll also say that librarians are pushing these topics onto children, and that's not the case at all. Librarians, if you tell them what you're looking for, they will help guide you to the materials best suited for your child. They'll also use words such as wholesome to describe libraries. And we do like to harken back to this idea of the library 50 years ago and thinking that it only had wholesome materials. But that library never existed. Libraries have always been a place of free inquiry and reading about people other than you and exploring ideas that you may not be exposed to in your small town. Also, you'll hear supporters of book bans use they're definitely play fast and loose with definitions.
Yes.
For books. They'll say that they're not banning books by removing them from a library or by removing them from a children's collection, because you can still buy them in the United States. But the fact is that when you look at the Intellectual Freedom Manual published by the American Library Association, when you ban something from a collection, that's when you remove it from the collection. So if you ban a book from a children's collection, you've removed that book from the children's collection.
Exactly.
They'll say that having these books in the children's collection is indoctrination. Well, when you remove all the books about a certain religion or about a certain topic and only present one religion or one side of the topic, that is actually the definition of indoctrination, not having books that present a variety of point of view. They'll also say that they'll show you a teen book, a book that was written that the content is appropriate for a 15, 16, 17-year-old, and they'll call it a children's book. And the fact is that a book that's written for a 16-year-old is very different from a book that's written for a 4 or a 5-year-old. Yet they'll use the word children to describe any book intended for an audience under the age of 18. So I want people to be aware of these mistruths that supporters of book bans are using and have the words that they need to vocalize opposition to them.
In one of the books we had, when we went to the quorum court meeting pretty early on, I had spoke to some of the, I'd spoke to the quorum court members. And one of the books in question, it hadn't even been read. It had been passed around in screenshots of pages of the book. And it was, the way it was being told was that it was accessible to children. It was in the adult section.
Yes.
And again, if we're going to remove that book, are we also going to remove 50 Shades of Grey? You know, there are other books that are in the adult section.
Yes.
That have the same amount of sexual content.
Yes, so, or my romance books.
Romance books.
Do not remove my romance books.
Yes, absolutely. So, and that's I asked the quorum court at that meeting, are they going to be willing to read every book in that library and review it? Because obviously they are not. They are taking pictures and passing them around.
Can you imagine
posting them
that?
on social media? One of the quorum court members I've known almost my entire life, and I offered to go with him to the library and sit with him and read books with him. And I don't think that he was big on that idea.
Yeah, I would find it delightful.
I would have loved it. It would have been so much fun. But you know, he wasn't. He didn't want to do that. So, and that was another quorum, or that same quorum court member. He also would throw out at the meetings that, well, my daughter is gay. Well, my daughter is gay too. I'm not working against my daughter. So it's been a very eye-opening experience.
Yes.
I think they should have a quorum court meeting where they read the book and make them read it. To know what they're banning.
Yes, we can do story times for the children's book.
Right. Right.
I would love it.
I have thought about taking, if I can get permission to speak at the quorum court meeting.
Oh, that's a whole nother thing.
That's a whole other issue. But I would love to take Like Me and read it to the quorum court, because that is a book that is up on a shelf, on the fourth shelf up. A child could not even reach that book, much less a child with a disability in a wheelchair, even reach that book. And it is in the adult section, in the social section. It cannot be reached by a child. It is hidden away. Right now, it's not hidden away because I have it checked out. So,
but it's just shameful.
It is.
Are we a community that has determined that books about children with disabilities is not appropriate for children to read? That's just shameful.
It is. It is. So what is the issue? Are you not able to be able to speak at the meetings?
Yeah, so this is interesting. The quorum court and our county judge have started really tightening down on public comments. You know, we do have open meeting laws that allow for the public to speak at quorum court meetings prior to decisions being made. And what's going on here is that the county judge has said if you want to speak at a quorum court meeting as a member of the public, you need to specifically email your justice of the peace and get permission prior to the meeting to speak. And you can only speak about topics that are on the agenda. So we would have to wait until the agenda is published for that meeting, and then email a JP to ask if we could speak about that. And then the JP has the right to say yes or no. This is all being done in the guise of the JPs wanting more control over the meeting and, being an efficient meeting and whatnot. But on my point of view is just that if I have a topic that my JP disagrees with, he's not going to let me talk about it, right? If he has the authority to say, yes, you can talk, or no, you can't, he's not going to allow people to talk if he disagrees with them.
If he even replies to the email requesting.
Yes, if he
that's a whole other.
Yes, because I've emailed our county judge and he doesn't respond to my email. So, and then the time limit, there's not much time between when the agenda is published to the start of the meeting. So it's a thing. It's a process even to get on the even to have the ability to speak on a legitimate topic in a public.
It's like you're being censored.
It's
yourself.
that funny, yes. Right? They start with.
Do you know who sets the agenda for the meetings, or how does that work? Or do you have to just wait until that topic is brought up on the agenda?
I imagine that it's the county judge who sets the agenda and items are proposed by the JPs, and the agenda is published on the county clerk's website as well as the local newspaper.
The local print
newspaper. So, like, if you do not subscribe to the newspaper and you do not have access to the internet, you will not know what the agenda is. If you do not have access to the internet, you are unable to email your JP. It limits the who in the public is allowed to speak.
It very much does. And Steve is on the call with the Rural Caucus. Maybe he can chime in if he's available on this. I would love to see a way that just, regular people in the community could bring up a topic and have that be a story time. Let's talk about these books and force them to listen to them and read them and ask them why those individual books were banned.
Interesting thing is I received an email from an advocate who did request to speak at the next quorum court meeting about library matters. And she was told that she was not allowed to ask any questions about the library because of the lawsuits.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was very interesting to hear that a JP is telling her constituents that she's not allowed to ask any questions about the library.
Wow.
Yeah. And we have that email if anyone is interested in looking at that.
Definitely. I would love to see it. Well, I don't know if we could post it here on Twitter. That might go against some of the Twitter rules, but definitely,
Yeah,
yeah.
anyone can contact us privately and we will share more information.
Hey, Steve, how are you?
I've been listening to this, and I've got to jump in. I'm glad that you asked my opinion. There's a little thing that we have in the United States called the First Amendment. And if we have government proceedings that are taking place and we have citizens that want to voice their opinions at that quorum court, they have the constitutional ability to do that. And I would love you to email me directly if you're having problems with that. And we will put the weight of the rural caucus, and I will come personally and help you fight that fight, because there is no fight bigger than the right to speak and the right to have our opinion of how our government's being run. So please reach out. I'd love that fight.
We will love to have you. It'll be a party. It's going to be fun. So yes, we'll get you that information.
Yeah, Dean had to drop off, but he has been working really hard in Craighead County with their library, and also he helped out with what is going on in Saline County. We there's that billboard that was there on I-30 saying something about the Saline County Library has X-rated books. That was just, I don't know if it's still up. It's been a while since I drove down there, but him and Bailey were able to just, social media. They set up a GoFundMe, and I think the last time I looked, they had raised $10,000 for billboards to be put up in Saline County. There's two, and the last time I looked, and that's great. It's so great to see they were able to do that in a week, I believe it was. It's great to see how many people in Arkansas are as appalled as we are.
Yes.
Against these bans.
Calais, I want to speak. I'll speak, and this is not the rural caucus opinion. It's not the Democratic Party's opinion. This is Steve Wright's opinion. They have awoken the beast. What happened in the 2020 and 2022 election was completely manipulated through the virus. They knew how to. The people who have brains and logic, put masks on and went home. And they stayed and they protected themselves and others. The crazy lunatics, and I'm not saying all the Republicans, but this crazy far right, take your rights away. I'm going to put my morals on you, and I'm going to take your rights away. That they got together when we were all at home and decided to take over. I truly believe that crazy, ignorant, radical side of the Republican Party is about 25% of the people, maybe 30. I think that there's a large part of that 30% that really doesn't understand what's going on. It's an uneducated issue. We have a problem in Arkansas because the people don't think they have a voice, and they've been run over so bad over the last decade that they're not voting. But now those same people that haven't been voting are seeing them come in and do all this radical, ignorant crap and take our rights away. They're taking the ability for our kids to have a diverse education away. They're trying to take our public schools away. They're trying to build prisons and put more people in it. We see what's happening, and we're going to rise up. You're going to see in 2024 a complete change in what's going on in Arkansas. We're not going to take back the House or anything like that. We don't have the infrastructure for that. But we are going to break this supermajority in 2024, and we are going to get the attention of more people to say, hey, I do have a voice. And when they're cutting our voices out in the quorum courts, they're taking our books away, they're shutting down our schools. It's time for a revolution. And this is going to really make a difference in what happens for the next 2 decades, 3 decades, and what our grandchildren are doing.
Yes.
So rise up.
And this is Mandy, and that's one of the scary things that I've watched happen is in Arkansas. It's these small grassroots groups that are getting together, these far right groups that have money behind them, and it's being done very quietly.
Mm-hmm.
it's being done very quietly. I feel like it's crept up on us, and they're after our local governments.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes, and so FYI, our quorum courts, our JPs, they're not going to be able to run unopposed next time. They have made moms mad, and they're not going to be running unopposed.
I'm considering joining Emerge Arkansas, and I live in a district where there's going to be an opening, and I've thought about running for
Do it.
CP.
Please
So,
do it.
Yes.
Please.
At least get them to spend money for their seat. Don't let them just get to run unopposed any longer.
That's at this point, it doesn't even matter if I win or lose. They have to run unopposed, and all of
unopposed seats
have. So
I highly encourage Emerge. If you are even thinking about running now or in the future, please go through this course. It's eye-opening. But I need to let everybody that's listening know I'm the chair of the Rural Caucus. Our mission is to recruit, train, fund, and elect people to all levels of offices across the state of Arkansas, especially in the 69 rural counties. If you're thinking about running for an office, even school board, please get with me, join the caucus. We will put our resources behind you, and we will help you get elected.
I love that.
We definitely need anybody listening. If there is a seat that is running unopposed in your area, just put your name in. We can't let Republicans and these far right extremists just walk into office. It's going to take all of us to really push back on this. Hi, Kevin.
Hey, good morning. Hey, I didn't want to jump in too much, but after Steve, what he said, I want to encourage everybody to follow up on what you just said, but also listen next Wednesday. We've got Ray up in Ohio, Coffee with Democrats Ohio, is going to meet Wednesday morning, early our time, 7 a.m. We're going to be having a conversation. Ray's going to have a conversation on his Coffee with Democrats with David Pepper. And David Pepper is one of the top tier, top shelf Democrats in the Democratic Party in the United States today, who is really advocating to do exactly what Steve said, to do exactly what everybody else has said. And really, we need to follow his encouragement and follow his guidance. Make sure we have a Democrat in every single precinct or every single election. Make sure that we've got somebody in there because, we may not win them all, but we're not going to surrender anybody anymore. This whole thing that happened in 2019, 2020, when people were backing away and hiding, we got to come out of that shell and we've got to step forward and we've got to put people into positions where they can be elected. And we've got to make sure that Republicans no longer go unopposed. That's the biggest problem we've got in deep red South, where we've got these super majorities, is we're just acquiescing, surrendering, and letting them go in unopposed. And that's got to stop.
I want to add to that, and that's exactly right. But I want everybody that's listening, elected office might not be for you. You may have too much, be an introvert and don't like to get out in front of people, or you have a job that won't allow you to do that type of thing. For every person that's new to run for office, you also have to remember, we don't have a campaign manager to help them get elected. We don't have fundraisers to help them get elected. We don't have community organizers to help them elected. We need you, whether you run for office or not, to get involved in the next 18 months and help us recruit somebody in your neighborhood to run for office.
Absolutely. It's not easy. Audra and I are both on a campaign together, and I don't know how people do it. I think there's a special type of person that can do that. That's one thing that we're seeing too. Like we need to find people that will run for office, and then we need to find a team that will back them up to help them. And so if you're not, like if you're like Audra and I, and you like to talk and you can't keep it shut sometimes, you're not best for office, but you can support those candidates. And just volunteering with their campaigns and donating directly to the candidates that you support is so much needed. Um, we are just hitting 10 o'clock, and I don't want to keep you all too long, but this has been a really great conversation. Just seeing all that is going on around the state, um, it is it's scary, but then to see everybody that is pushing back and standing up and saying, we're not going to take this and we're not going to allow this, has been really inspiring. And like Mandy was saying earlier, somebody told her about what was going on and that's how she got involved. That's how it works. So we need to be talking to our neighbors, our family, and our friends. Go ahead, Kevin.
Say, I just wanted to talk just briefly. I put a couple of notes over there onto the thread about the book ban. I'm not advocating for anybody to ban any books. Don't get me wrong. I don't want any book bans. But for every single time we get these JPs in there that are talking about we've got to ban these books, we've got to move them to some other area so that they can't be accessible, and we've got to purchase these books so that we can burn them or whatever they're doing. I think the biggest argument that we can have is get to know the book they cherish the most. I cherish this book also, but the Bible is full of sexual content. It's full of rape and incest and degrading of women. It's really a book that we've got to make sure that every single time they want to bring this argument up, we've got to shove it down their throat that if they want to ban books, they've got to start with the Bible. If they don't want to ban the Bible, then shut the F up.
And that's a very compelling argument. And there are versions of the Bible that include genocide, that include incest, that are targeted to children. Children's versions of the Bible all include the story of Lot's daughters and Sodom and Gomorrah and all that.
I'm Gen X. So when I was a kid, I went to a church camp. Well, it wasn't a church camp. It was like a kids' crusade in Fort Smith. And they sent home this comic book. I don't know if anybody remembers the comic book. I can't remember if it was called the Story Bible or the Storybook Bible, but it's all comics. And I remember as an 8-year-old looking at some of the pictures. I mean, it had everything. It was the Bible in comic strip form, and just being shocked at some of the images that it showed.
It hits different
Yes.
when you see it in a depiction like that. It does hit different.
Yes, it does.
It really does. And before we go, I know it's not, it is Pride Month, and it's not really about the censorship, but it is in a way as well. Mandy, reading about the work that you're doing right now with the LGBTQIA plus community, I wanted to just talk a little bit about that and really spotlight that because we need that in Arkansas.
Yes, and there's so many exciting things going on in Arkansas this month just with Pride. And we really need to be, as allies, showing up at these events and supporting the LGBTQ community. We really owe it to them to show up and show that we're not afraid. That's been one of the big fears is, we have to have extra security. We have to be aware of our surroundings. We had a free Mom Hugs Zoom training last night. And that was one of the things we talked about on the Zoom training was be aware of your surroundings, especially in Arkansas. And we shouldn't have to be afraid to show up and celebrate. And, there's some horrible legislation. Yes, there's some horrible legislation, but we're also, there's also some exciting things happening. This weekend, we're going to Morrilton Pride. I think it was last weekend or the weekend before, there was Pride Pride in the Ozarks, and I can't remember the little town that's in, but that it's a very small town. And they had a pride celebration, and they're popping up all over. So we really want to support these organizations. We're planning. I went to a planning meeting on Wednesday night. Fort Smith will have a pride celebration. They're going to wait till October when they can pull everything together and make sure they have all their ducks in the row. But you really need to. They have a Facebook. It used to be the River Valley Equality Center, but now it is I believe it's the River Valley. It's River Valley Pride, and they have got their 501c3, and they're working as adults. And then also we've got Lambda, which is an organization in Fort Smith that they serve allies, allies and the LGBTQ community. So it is a community center for everybody. So when they have a donut story time, it's open to everybody. But they also have young adult groups, they have teenage groups, and I volunteered with the teenage and the young adult groups. And I can't tell you how amazing that is to sit with some of these young adults and hear what they have gone through. That's another thing I encourage people. You don't know unless you're immersed in it. I had no idea the rate of homelessness in our communities until my daughter came out and some of her friends started coming around, and I started meeting them and saw how many were homeless. You don't know. So I encourage people to volunteer with these organizations, reach out, even just small things like providing meals. I encourage everybody to get involved.
Thank you. We do need to get involved, allies, and even the people that are pushing, especially the people that are pushing back against human rights for the LGBTQIA plus community. A lot of them are going off of what they've been told or taught to think, and if they really truly got to know people in the community and volunteered at events, um, they wouldn't think the way that they think, and they wouldn't feel the way that they feel. We definitely allies need to educate others on the harmful things that they're doing to the communities when they damage them this way.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mandy, for that.
Yeah, people are missing out on a lot of amazing friendships and relationships in the community by opposing them and standing back and not getting involved. We can't just stand by.
You're right, and neither one of you are just standing by. I am so grateful and thankful to you both for coming on and talking with us. Rebecka, thank you for pushing back, Mandy as well, on the censorship that's going on. And I hope that everything goes really well with your lawsuit. I'll be catching up with that.
Yes, we are very confident.
Yeah, I mean, what we're seeing across the country and other places, that gives me hope. So any way that we can support you, please let us know.
Yes, right now, support your public libraries. Summer reading programs are getting kicked off. So sign up your kids, sign up your grandkids. They even have summer reading for adults now. So definitely go support your public libraries and also read banned books.
Yeah.
Read the books they don't want you to read and start asking some questions.
Absolutely. Thank you both. I did put up in the nest above us Ray's Space, Coffee with Democrats in Ohio. He'll have David Pepper on next week on the 14th at 7 a.m. Central Time. That'll be a really great conversation. Kevin, who do you have on next week?
That's a good question because I've been reaching out to several Democrat leaders. The person I'd planned on having was Ken Martin from the Democratic Farm DIF, and he is not going to be available. So, but I'm hoping that we'll get him the following week. So now I'm reaching out to former Governor David Walters for the state of Oklahoma to try to get him on. If he is not available, then I'm going to punt. I don't know what I'm going to do, but
Okay.
we'll get something going.
Yeah, we'll get something. Maybe we could reach out to Gloria, and
Yeah, that'd be great.
we were
That
just
would be
talking about that. Her
Yeah.
running for
Gloria Johnson. Yeah, try to
Mhm.
get, because I think she's going to be running for Senate in Tennessee. So yes.
Awesome. And I will have next Friday at 9 a.m. I'll have Steve on, and we'll be talking about the Capes Coalition. There's been some great news this week. Steve, do you want to give us a quick update on that?
We are collecting signatures. The Attorney General has passed finally our referendum title on the third try. Tongue in cheek, he's like, "Well, you over summarized this. I can't say that you didn't do that," and he passed it. And we're in the midst of training. We certified our first 60 canvassers last night. We'll be doing trainings almost daily for the next 60 days. And now we need to get 54,422 registered votes. And we send the LEARNS Act that is so devastating to the future of public schools in Arkansas to the ballot box for the people to decide. And our polling says they're going to vote it out.
I can't wait. That's going to be a really good conversation. So you guys tune in next week to all of our spaces. Great conversations coming up. Follow each page if you're not already, so you can get updates on the guests and the topics that are being discussed. Thank you all so much for